It's not the cholesterol that causes the damage to the arteries in the arterial wall, it's the inflammation. The cholesterol is there as a band-aid. So blaming cholesterol for heart disease, it's like blaming firefighters for buildings that catch on fire, because every time you see a building that catches on fire, you notice there are firefighters there. Are the firefighters the cause of the fire? No, they are there to put out the fire. Cholesterol is there to put out the inflammation fire.
Here's why this is total nonsense. Firefighters attend the scene of a fire in order to help the situation. If a community did not have access to fire services, they would have worse outcomes from fires. If all funding was cut to fire services, fires would get worse, not better. So the presence of the fire service improves fire outcomes, and their absence makes those outcomes worse. When we look at the case of LDL cholesterol, we see the exact opposite. So this analogy is totally useless. When LDL cholesterol or atherogenic lipoproteins are elevated across the lifespan, i.e. we have more firefighters, the outcomes are actually worse. So in this case, you'd be making the argument that the more firefighters we have, the worse fire outcomes would be. More people would die from fires. Well, I think we should get rid of those firemen. And that's the case with LDL cholesterol. As it increases, outcomes are worse. As it decreases, outcomes are better. So when we lower LDL cholesterol either through diet or through medication, cardiovascular outcomes actually improve. So in this case, we've considerably scaled back the fire service, and it seems that there are less fires and the fires have better outcomes. That doesn't really make sense. And again, this is because this is just a shoddy analogy. And another piece to this analogy that doesn't really make sense is that he's suggesting inflammation is similar to the context of a fire. But again, we see that whether inflammation is low or high, lowering LDL cholesterol or atherogenic lipoproteins continues to reduce risk, which in the fire analogy would suggest that whether it's a small fire or there's no fire, or there's a gigantic tower fire, having less firemen still improves outcomes. Again, the analogy is absolutely useless. It doesn't make sense. And he's incorrect about LDL cholesterol. The higher your LDL cholesterol, the higher your heart disease risk. It doesn't mean it's the only variable. Blood pressure is important, your weight is important, whether or not you smoke is important, how insulin sensitive you are is important, how active you are is important, and so on. So no, we shouldn't look at LDL cholesterol or ApoB in a vacuum. That is not good cardiovascular care. But I can tell you that despite being very fit and healthy, lean, not drinking alcohol, not smoking, etc., if my ApoB or LDL is through the roof, I'm going to be addressing that. I don't think there's an exception for me because I happen to be otherwise healthy. Just because you have some things in your favor doesn't mean you're exempt from worrying about LDL and ApoB.